Well, well, well. Hello, everybody. Your prodigal teacher is back. Uh, so it's really good to be with you again for these Sunday live chats. I've missed them, but I appreciate Roger filling in and providing at least something for you on the third Sundays till I can make it back. So glad to be here. We're going to do a little bit of reading warm and cool colors today. You know, that seems to be something that keeps popping up with students, questions I get in the comments section, and questions that I get from working with students privately. It's not that people have such a problem reading the really highly saturated colors. Seems to be those colors that are more muted, the colors we see most in nature, like some of the colors you see behind me now in those clouds. So we'll be doing that, and all I need from you is for you to ask questions. So while everybody's coming in and we're getting ready to get things rolling, let me just give a brief explanation. May seem repetitive, but there might be some new folks to let you know how this works. Because we get such an abundance of questions, if we open it to everybody, we've had to limit who can ask questions to those folks who are Studio Insider members. You know, it's really easy to become a member. All you have to do is to look down below the video there somewhere. You'll see the word join, and when you click on that, of course it's going to ask you to pay $4.99 a month. That's just a penny under $5, which is not very much, considering not only can you ask questions and joining in the discussion while we're doing these live chats, but you also get every month a free video lesson from our lessons website. And not only that, but every month you also get a free little video snippet that happens on second Sundays of every month. So on the first Sundays of every month, all members will get a coupon code, and you can use that coupon code and go to the lessons site, DianneMize.com, choose any lesson that's there, and you can get that lesson free. So that's the benefits of being a Studio Insider, but also to explain to you why we keep the chat the way we do. And there, I see Eve has appeared and saying, welcome back, and thank you, Eve. I can't tell you what a joy it is to finally be back doing this again, to finally feel human again. You know, when something like that happens to you, something just feels like half human until you can begin to do the things you love again. So it is really great to be back. All right, so I think maybe what we'll do now is just go ahead and get the thing rolling and let folks, as people come in, begin to ask questions. Okay, so what we're going to do now, I've made a little video for you. It's about 15 minutes. Explaining how to read warm and cool. I go first of all into showing you how to find whether a color is warm or cool, and then I go into getting you a little bit more towards how to read colors that you see as to whether they're warm or cool. And later, maybe after the video, we can chat why you really need to know whether a color is warm or cool. So we can get in all of that after the video. All right, so let's just go ahead and start rolling the video, and then we will have a discussion. If you will, while the video's playing, just if you have questions while it's playing, jot that question down and wait until we come back on to ask the question. I'll be more likely to catch it then. Okay, Roger, are you ready?
Very ready.
Let her roll. better question to ask is what causes any color to feel warm or to feel cool? Let's find the answer to that, and guess what? Our color wheel. The range of hues on our wheel do fall into those that feel warm to us and those that feel cooler to us. And if you notice, the more blue a color has in it, the cooler it feels, and the more red or orange or yellow it has in it, the warmer it feels. Let's break that down. Start with yellow. Now let's go this direction and see what happens. When yellow gets a little bit of blue added to it, it changes to yellow-green, becomes a little cooler. A little more blue into it, changes to green, even cooler. Then to blue-green, even cooler. And then blue. Blue is as cool as we can go. Now watch what happens. When blue begins to get a little red added to it, it gets a little warmer. We could say that in reverse and say, when red begins to have blue added into it, it gets a bit cooler. A little more blue, cooler. Little more blue, cooler, and then blue as cool as we can go. Now what happens between red and yellow? Well, that's an argument. I have my opinion. I think that yellow is actually warmer than red, but there are some people who think that red is warmer than yellow. But what we know is that this whole range between yellow and red are warmer than the colors that have blue in them. So the more blue a color has in both directions, this whole section over here ends up being on what we call the cool side of the color wheel, and this section over here ends up being the warm side of the color wheel. It seems to have a division about right here. A lot of people argue about which is warmer, yellow-green or red-violet. They both have an equal amount of blue in them, but to my perception, red-violet is a little bit cooler than yellow-green. That's when they're at their highest saturation. Now, when we're working with the color wheel, we work in two directions to get its full potential. Of course, we work in the hue direction, how hue changes hue, but we also work in the saturation direction, what happens to hues when we add to them their complement. And the temperature of a color will change as you desaturate it. Now we can see this with this background I've set up for you here of blue and orange. Do you notice how this side feels warmer than this side? Just let your eyes kind of roam over there and you'll see what I mean. We take the color wheel away, lose its influence, and now in a gray environment, a totally neutral environment, you can see that this side feels warmer than this side. And you can see how it feels cooler right over here where it's in the bluest range, but then you can see that it gradually begins to get a little bit warmer in this direction. It's easy to perceive when they are in the same value range as these are. Now let's take that center out and let's play just a little bit. Let me show you how that happens. Let's put pure orange right here. And now let's add just a touch of blue to it. Can you see how that feels slightly cooler? Let's add just a little bit more blue to it. And we see it get even cooler than that. Now I'm going to add a good bit more blue to it. Now we see it loses almost all of its orange. It's beginning to resemble the blue here a little bit more. Let's take it one more step. And now you can see the progression. You see how this feels more akin to the blue here when we don't see any orange left. So you see a progression here that actually goes warmer to cooler, because each progression has a bit more blue in it. Every color on the wheel works that way. So to summarize what happens to cause colors to be cool or warm, or for us to feel them as cool or warm, when they change from one hue to another, they're also going to change temperature. So a yellow changing to yellow-orange is going to get a little bit cooler. A yellow changing to yellow-green is going to get a little cooler. A blue-green changing to green is going to get a little warmer. So in moving in the circular fashion around the color wheel, whenever one color changes towards another, it changes temperature as well. And also, any of the complements having another complement added to them will change temperature. So if we take violet, and if we're desaturating violet, we have to add yellow. And when we add that yellow, we get it warmer. So when we're desaturating the cool colors, we are making them warmer in temperature. And when we're desaturating the warm colors, we're making them cooler in temperature. So to learn to read warm and cool, we really need to learn to read hues as they progress around the color wheel, and be able to envision in our minds how those hues are placed side by side, and also train ourselves to see what happens to the hues when each of their complements are added into them. Now that seems to be where most people have trouble reading warm and cool according to the hues that are present in a color. When we see color, especially in nature, we don't always see the color as saturated as we see these colors on the outside edge of the color wheel. Now, the color wheel, a traditional color wheel, only shows us the saturated colors, the relationship of the saturated colors. But then, what we really need to learn to read, how to read, are not only the saturated colors, but other colors that appear in forms of desaturation. The desaturation actually happens visually when a complement is mixed in with a saturated color. And the degree to which that complement is mixed in will cause that degree of desaturation. That happens at all value levels. What we see here is only one value level. That's not a bad place to begin to get a handle on this thing. Here I've taken away the more saturated colors. These colors, the ones we see in this desaturated range, are most likely the ones we're going to see in nature. Now we're going to see all the value levels of these too. And we will see some other levels of saturation. But when we can learn to look at these desaturated colors and tell ourselves what hue we're actually looking at, then we can begin to recognize hues as warm or cool. Remember that the cooler hues are on the side, or the blue side, the colors on the color wheel that have blue in them, and the warmer ones are on this side, the ones that are in the range of yellow to red. When they get desaturated, the warmer colors become cooler, the cooler colors become warmer, but there's still that relationship you can see here. Even though this color is desaturated, meaning it has lots of orange in it, it is still cooler than this warmer orange color, which has lots of blue in it. So we still have that warm-cool relationship, even though these two are desaturated. But our principle of a color that has more blue in it than another color still holds true. In this case, this color has more blue in it than this. This desaturated color has more blue in it than this. This desaturated color Red-orange has more blue in it, the blue that's in green. And even if you go over to the violets, this desaturated color of violet has more blue in it than this, so therefore it's warmer. So you see the desaturated colors get warmer than the saturated colors on the cool side, and the desaturated colors on the warm side get cooler. More blue in it makes it cooler. So detecting that, building that sensibility of being able to recognize that is one surefire way of being able to read warm and cool in all colors. Let's read a couple of areas of hue in this photograph of a forest and test that out. Now keep in mind we're looking for hue, specific hues. That means that we're looking for a range. Greens, for example, fall or appear in the range of yellow-green through green all the way over to blue-green. So a green is not just a green hue, not just a green, but it's a green that either registers exactly in that green range, or it has some yellow in it, it's leaning towards yellow-green, or it has blue in it, leaning towards blue-green. And that doesn't negate the saturation of it, because when we have degrees of saturation, we still have that hue that we're looking at. So, for example, if we're looking at a blue-green, we have a range of saturations that might appear, all the way down to barely able to see any hue in it at all. So if we look in this area right over here, for example, does this area fall more in the yellow-green range? In other words, do you see more a green that leans more towards yellow, or does it fall in the blue-green range? You see a green that leans more towards blue. If we isolate that area, it makes it a little easier to see. So you see, we're looking at a range of blue-greens. Now let's compare that with the kind of green we're seeing in this general area. Now just allow your eye to look for hue. Are you seeing this hue in a closer relationship to the blue-green? And we know we're looking in the areas of desaturation. So does this feel cool blue-green like this does? Or does it feel warmer? Look in this area of desaturation. Or does it feel even warmer than that? Look in this area of desaturation. Let your eye move from here to here, and you see that this green is actually a yellow-green, a range of yellow-green. This is very desaturated, so is this, but we still have enough hue in there that we can discern the difference between this green and these greens. Now, if we look at the greens in the very distance there, let's pull the wheel up there. These greens in the very distance are much lighter value, but even though the value changes, remember we're looking for hue, and hue determines the temperature. The hue is still there. There's enough hue in there for us to see this as a lighter value than this right in here, very desaturated blue-green. We see some detection of yellow within that area, but mainly what we're seeing as that moves in the distance, it has more blue in it. Let's stop now and give you a chance to ask your questions. Okay, am I back? I'm back. Okay. All right, folks. Now you've had the little introduction to get hopefully stimulate some questions, hopefully stimulate some thoughts about reading, how we can go about to read those warm and cool colors. So wait for your questions, but I also want to just kind of maybe repeat something for you just a little bit. And that is to say that the color wheel, as I said here, these traditional color wheels we get, well, first of all, they all have stuff built in the center of them that I think is nothing but confusing. Some of you might find that very helpful, I find that it ends up complicating things. It sort of makes you try to memorize, but the point is not to memorize, but the point is to train yourself to see and to know what questions you can ask yourself in order to more clearly see the difference in the colors and what you would need to do to create that difference in your painting, which is what I'm after. So what I advise, and what I always had when I was doing live classes, what I always had my students to do, that for some of them broke their hearts, but take an X-Acto knife and just cut that crap out. All that stuff that's in the center of those color wheels that you get that have the saturated colors all on the outside edge. Just take an X-Acto knife and cut out that stuff, and then you have an area open inside the color wheel where you can actually hold it up, and you're able to compare what you're seeing in the ahead of you. You're able to compare that with the actual color itself, and you can rotate the wheel in your hand according to what color you're looking for, or to help you to kind of match up hues that you think you see, and you can put your color wheel beside it, just kind of hold it out like this in your hand. And I just find that to be a whole lot more helpful and functional than trying to memorize some formula these wheels have in the center there. So I know that doesn't go off well with with the people that create these color wheels. They would object to that terribly. And there might be other people, maybe other painters and maybe teachers that would object to that terribly. But all of you know I don't really care about that. What I want is the quickest way for you to be able to see color and to then mix the color that you see. Or more than that, to be able to mix the color that you want to create for whatever, I don't like the word effect, for whatever expression you want to give to your subjects when you're working with color. So I'm ready to take your questions now. If any of you have questions, did that stimulate any question, or is this old stuff for you? Do you already feel confident in your ability to read warm and cool? Well, for example, if you look at this scene behind me, do you see, for example, right here, do you see how this color is right in this area warmer than it is in this area right here? Can you see that that is actually cooler than this? Now, would you know when if you wanted to do a painting of that scene, would you know what you would need to do to this color? What would you need to do to change it to that? Now, if you look at that really, really closely, what you see here is that it just gets a little bit less saturated. Less saturated. Saturated means the amount of hue that is actually present in that color. The amount of hue is actually present in that color. Now, if you want to get a parallel of that to the anything else that you're familiar with, let's take something that you all are familiar with, and that is sugar. Good old-fashioned sugar. Or if those of you may object to sugar, you can think of honey in the same way. You know, if you are, let's just say, if you are sweetening, if you're sweetening your tea, now this will be turning somebody because there are people that drink their tea pure, they don't want any sweetener in it. But let's just hypothetically, let's say, if you're putting sweetener in your tea, if you have too much of that sweetener in there, you taste it. But if you put less of that sweetener in there, you taste it, but it might match what you're looking for as sweetener more than if you put way too much. If you have so much sweetener in there that you can no longer taste the tea, let's call that saturation. That sweetener has saturated that tea. But the amount of sweetener that you put in there will determine how much you taste. And the same thing is true with hue. The amount of hue that is in a color will determine how much you perceive. And so if there is just a little bit of hue in a color, you would probably see that color more as a neutral, like this. You see very little hue in this. Now, on the monitor I'm looking at the moment, the hue that I see in here seems to me to be leaning, in my perception, a little bit towards violet, towards purple. Very desaturated, but then if I move up just a little bit, I see a little bit of the hue of blue popping through. And of course, as we move down right here, we see a little bit of the hue of the blue. But that's what I'm talking about, just a little bit of hue in here. Not very much, so that it makes it difficult to read. And we've been calling, all of our lives, we've grown up calling that gray. Well, gray doesn't really tell you what you need to do to get what you see. And some other example might be that, let me see if I can find a place where, okay, where am I over here? Right there, right down in the corner there. Right in the corner. Let me move over just a little bit. Yeah. Maybe all of you can't see that, but if you call that color anything but orange, the one's right down in that extreme corner, right in there. Okay, if I raise my arm and get in the way, right there, right there. If you call that anything but orange, then like if you were to call it burnt sienna, well, it's not really burnt sienna, but the point is, if you call it anything but its hue name, that doesn't give you any information about how to create that color, how to make that color. And so that's why I think it's so important that we identify all color by, first of all, its hue name. Now, then, when we're able to identify it by its hue name, we can locate that hue name on the color wheel, and we can know whether by itself, whether that color tends to lean more towards warm or more towards cold. Now, and the other thing is that if we're looking at this example again here, we see that this is the environment here. This warm color is also enabling this to appear more cool. The fact that they're side by side, if this color were isolated by itself, it might not appear, we might not feel the cool relationship. But when we are painting, the relationship of the colors that we put in our painting will cause one color to enhance the other. So the warm enhances our ability to see the cool, and vice versa. The cool enhances our ability to see the warm. And so it really is a fascinating thing to work with when you begin to really grasp that concept of warm and cool. Is the chat live turned on?
Yeah.
It seems to.
They're taking it all in.
They're taking it all in. Nobody's got questions. I think, Roger, if you will, put on the screen the slide number 1, the one that I was working with in the video, and let's take a look at that just a little bit. And
All right.
Okay. We'll give Roger just a second there. There we go. Let me move over. There we go. There we go. Okay, so one thing that if you take a subject such as this, let me show you. Let me point out to you 2 scenarios. One scenario would be if you haven't learned the language, the hue language, and the warm and cool language. One scenario would be that you might just call these colors, the tree colors here, you might just call those gray. You might just call this gray. And you might even, way back here, You might just call these gray. And maybe even the tree trunk, this like right in here, you might just call that gray. And you might just mix black and white. And you might get it the right value. But if you just mix black and white, and at that value, but if you and just put it in that environment, you really haven't set up a relationship with the other colors that's going to enable that gray color to communicate or to feel as if it belongs within this environment. Now, images belonging to each other, their relationship to each other, can be created in a number of ways, but through color is one of the main ways that we create a visual relationship of our images as we paint. And that's why it's important that we are able to read or to see the difference in the colors. So you can see if we are looking for this color to be, if we're looking for this color to be in a hue, if we're trying to find the hue, now we know it's very desaturated. So if you can imagine the wheel that I was working with, where we were working with, when I was doing the orange and blue thing, remember how it got closer and closer to blue? Well, then this one seems to be leaning more towards blue, but still very desaturated. It might be leaning more towards blue-green, but very desaturated. So my suggestion would be, rather than to guess, it would be to say, all right, if that's more blue-green, let me see if I can mix a very desaturated blue-green at this value level and get that color. So then, if you have the blue-green out of the tube, and what would that be? It might be a phthalo green. It might be Rembrandt Viridian. Let's just say one of those two, because we could, there are a number of colors that come in tubes that are in that blue-green range. So you just start there. Then, if you look across, if you look on your color wheel directly across from blue-green, you find, what do you find? Red-orange. Blue-orange. The complement of blue is orange. Complement of red is green. So blue-green's complement is red-orange. So at that same value level, you could begin to add a little red-orange into that blue-green to desaturate it. And the marvelous thing is, you can adjust the value with white. When you're that deep, not much. It wouldn't take much white at all. But you can adjust the value with white. But then if you make a little test strip, like you've seen me do on the quick tips, a little test strip, or just a little strip of paper where you put a splotch of your color, or if you just use the back of your palette knife and just hold it up, just hold that palette knife up to that color, and just pretend my fingernail there's the palette knife, and compare. But let your eyes move back and forth between what's on your palette knife and what's on the color. If it's not quite neutral enough, then you would add a little bit more red-orange to it gradually, and then till you reach that point where you have just a little bit of that blue-green left in there, and then you would be able to create the color we're seeing there of those trees, that neutral color we'll see to those tree trunks of I'm talking about the ones that are registering in that very, very neutral that we would call gray. Instead of calling it gray, what if you call it desaturated blue-green? You see, thinking that way and using that kind of approach where the hue is the language. The hue is the language that we use, first of all, in order to be able to identify temperature. And then, when that hue is sitting in an environment, in a painting environment, with other hues, the hues present that have more visible blue in them are cooler, and the ones that have less blue visible are warmer. Now, I should say, let's go back to these in the very, very distance here that are taking on more of a yellow-orange, or is that more of a, I think it's more of kind of an orange hue. You see these right in here. This one's very, very, very much warmer in temperature than these behind it. And I don't know whether that's the way I think it's probably the way the light is hitting it, but it also could be just a local color change, but that's difficult to see when you're looking at photographs. You can't always know what you're looking at when you're looking at photographs. But we do see there a hue change. We do see there that this is a warmer hue. This one right up through there. Where am I going? Right up through there. That's a warmer hue than this one. We can see that. And we know that because of the warm colors, red, orange, red through orange, red to red, orange to yellow, orange to yellow. And so that side of the color wheel tends to be warm. It is warm. The other side of the color wheel is cool. And it doesn't mean that the warmer colors can't become cooler when they are desaturated. Or it doesn't mean that the cooler colors can't become warmer when they're desaturated. But when two of those are compared, when there's a cool color in the relationship and there's a warm color in the relationship, that's how we can tell whether it's cool or warm. If it identifies with the warm side of the color wheel, you can more or less identify it as warm. All right, there comes a question. Mary Ellen, thank you. You said that's a great review. Aha. I guess maybe the time I've either sharpened my brain or made me hungry to chat. Maybe it's just made me hungry to chat. Okay, Mary Ellen says, in the example you just gave of the tree bark, since the hue is blue-green and you're going to desaturate it with red-orange, does it matter whether the red and the red-orange is cool red? Ah, that's a good question. Red-orange is a cool red. That's a really good question. If the red, a cool red, a cool red would be like red-violet. If it does the job, it doesn't matter. Use the visual approach. If it does the job, it doesn't matter. Because not just the colors that are directly opposite the color wheel are useful in desaturating, but all the colors opposite that have some of the other colors in it. Roger, can you pop a color wheel up?
Yeah.
Okay, pop a color, just the red, this traditional color wheel, just the one man. Pop that up and let me pontificate. There we go. Okay, so now let's see if I can find it. Y'all know the problem I'm having here, don't you? That I'm seeing myself backwards. So, all right, never mind. Okay, here we go. So, say for example, let's say here, there's the blue-green, and here's the red-orange. Okay, blue-green could also be desaturated with red. If it's desaturated with red, the desaturation happens to the green part, but not the blue part. So it will be, if it's desaturated just with red, it would be a neutral that would lean more towards blue, because the red would be desaturated the green out. You see, blue-green could also somewhat be desaturated with red-violet. Now, the red here in the red-violet would desaturate the green that's in blue-green, but then the blue that's in violet would blend with the blue that's in blue-green and make that a very cool desaturation. You see what I'm doing there? And the opposite would be true as you're going around the wheel. Pardon me. The opposite would be true if you're going around the wheel. So you don't have to have, in fact, you don't have to have the color that's directly opposite the wheel to have a desaturation of any of those colors. Anything that has in it the complement of whatever color you're working with can also work to desaturate it. Although it won't go totally neutral, because it's going to be biased towards the other color that's present. For example, if you were desaturating yellow with red-violet, well, the yellow would desaturate the violet portion of it, but then the red in the yellow, the red in the red-violet would blend with the yellow and lean that more towards the orange. So you would have a neutral that leaned more towards orange. It's a beautiful thing to work with, so it might be fun sometimes just to take any color. The primaries are more flexible than, well, I don't know, maybe they're not. Anyway, it'd be fun sometimes, just for fun, if you take any color on the color wheel and then start at any point between the primaries and see see what you get when you get desaturation. So say, for example, if you started with red, the color red itself, and of course we know we can desaturate it with green, but then go beside the green, and yellow-green has green in it too. Try desaturating it with yellow-green and see what you get, and then go back over and try desaturating with blue-green and see what you get. And then you go the other way around. Say if you take a color like, violet. This is really, really fun. If you take one of the secondaries, like violet, you desaturate it with yellow, but then you can also desaturate it with yellow-orange. Well, what's going to happen is that the red, slight little bit of red and yellow-orange is going to cause it to be the neutral to lean more towards red. Then you can also desaturate it, get a somewhat desaturation with orange. But say the yellow in the orange would desaturate towards into purple, but then the red would blend with the red in the violet and make that, pardon me, more of a red. Seemed to have breathed something there. Sorry about that. Okay, hope that, did I get too carried away there? Maybe not. Ellen asked, if you were painting the photo behind you, would you make the tree trunk warmer than is further back? Not necessarily. I would create that warm relationship as those images move back. We don't have any of those real warm images, warm tree trunk images towards the front, so that's hard to make that comparison. But that red orange or on those tree trunks as they go back there would also have need to be a little bit cooler. They shouldn't be as warm because they are feeling within that cool environment. As things move back in this particular case, we've got that aerial perspective that's causing those images to gradually get cooler as they go in the distance. So what's actually happening there is the atmospheric particles of the sky are blending, the colors of the blue of the sky are blending or mixing with those colors as they're going back, which accounts for why these blue greens back here are a lot cooler than these greens are in the front there. So I would keep that, I would lean that more towards the cool orange, which we can do. I guess maybe, I hope I answered that right. You'll have to let me know, Ellen, if I answered that right. Yeah, it is fascinating, Mary Ellen. Working with color, when we're playing with what, when I say what color does to color, that's why I find it so exciting, and that's what I mean. When you're doing it from a point of view of what color does to color, what does a yellow-orange do to a blue-green, or what does a red-orange do to a blue-green? And you start looking at the components of that, and then you come to the amounts, how much of one you add into the other. Then you come to the various values that you can get of those. It really is a fascinating thing. And I think it's more of a thing of experiencing it. Experience it through doing, rather than trying to memorize what's going to happen. There's no way to memorize what's going to happen. You can train yourself in all the theory in the world, but when it comes right down to it, knowing those pigment numbers, not going to help at all. What's really going to make it real to you is when you do it. When you just take the bare bones of what we're talking about today and play with it. Make it a playful adventure where you're trying to see what's going to happen and what kind of relationship. How do you get it cooler? How do you get it warmer? Especially when you're in those neutral areas, and you can work with that little flexibility I was just talking about across the wheel. And you'll find that you can get some marvelous things going on where you can lean some areas cooler and you can lean some areas warmer. And Ellen says, thanks, that makes sense. Well, I'm glad it made sense because I never know in these chats whether it's making sense or not. Roger, would you pop up slide number 3? I want to show you something that's just a little opposite of what we're talking about here. And we can look at how much fun it might be with play with an image like this. You can go on Pixabay. I pull these images from Pixabay, these images I'm using for teaching. Unless I have an image myself of any of my photos that have in them what I want it to have in order to teach whatever we're working with. I usually go grab something from Pixabay. They're not copyrighted, so then we don't have to worry about stepping on somebody's copyright there. Okay, now you see this one. we hardly have any hue at all present in these colors. And you can see that you can see more hue in here, but you don't see much. It's very, very neutralized. You don't see much of this, but we can still identify the hue. We can identify that this is in some perhaps yellow-green range, but it's very neutral. It's so neutral it doesn't feel yellow-green. It's so neutral. Roger, pop up that 6 degree intensity wheel there. I don't know whether that'll help or not, but just there we go. Okay. All right. So if we're looking at here again, I'm going to have trouble with my pointing. All right. So we can look right in here in the yellow green. Of course, you see at this value. And of course, remember, this could be even more neutral than I have in this color wheel. But see, right in here, I think this yellow-green could be even a little bit more yellow. The one that we're looking at down here, I think we could probably lean it, make it a little bit more, lean it a little bit more towards yellow-green than this particular yellow-green. And that's the other thing too, is that these colors are not static as they appear on the color wheel. They're not static, but they can gradually move one to the other. Yellow-green can gradually move towards yellow and still be yellow-green as long as we can see any of the green in it. And then and the other side of it can work too. So that's where I think that if I were trying to mix this color I'm seeing right here, it's relatively dark in value, as you can see. I think I would start with the yellow-green, start reducing the intensity of the yellow-green, and I might find that I might need to add just a little bit more of the yellow to it to get that. I know it's kind of an ugly color, but we could make something wonderful out of that scene if we're working with that warm cool combination. You can take away the intensity wheel now, so you can see the wheel. Yeah. We got to get you an intensity wheel that we can see through there. Yeah, so if you see, we've got lots of warm, cool things going on, and it's very, very subtle. And so this wouldn't have to be a muddy painting. It might be something very exciting. This subject might be something very exciting for us to work with, because look what we have here. We have all this getting cooler right back in here. Although it's on that warm, it's on that warm side. So I'm looking at that and thinking, as that goes back, what we've got there is we've got colors that are desaturated on the warm side of the wheel. That's what it looks like to me. And then we can see the ones in front, they're getting warmer. So that looks to me like a gradation on the saturation scale, where it looks like we're forming a lot of the colors we're seeing in there. It looks like we'd be forming those on the warm side of the wheel, but we'd be changing saturation and changing value on the warm side of the wheel. I see red oranges right in here. Oh, good. That's great. I see red oranges. And let me see. Okay, let's get down here. Oh, there we go. Look, y'all. Look, you see these colors in here? You see how you can see lots of this right in here? Right in here, going around, and it seems to be like an analogous relationship. Let's go here with this finger. I can do that better. It's analogous relationship that kind of moves in this direction right here in the desaturated area. And so it's warmer. These are where we're seeing these colors. It's a lot warmer. It's warmer. And then as it moves towards the yellow, we see those as a little warmer. And then it gets over here, we see some of those see towards the front there, and then we'll see it's beginning to get a little bit more blue in it. So it's a fun thing to work with, and you'll be surprised that if you well, let me back up and say this. A lot of people talk about muddy, muddy. Oh, that's the muddy scene. There'll be a lot of people, I don't want to paint that, that's ugly. You could make a beautiful painting out of that. Because playing with that is warm and cool. And you know, when you put them, like I talked about in the scene that Roger had behind me, recall and remember I was talking about the warm emphasizes the cool emphasizes the warm emphasizes the cool. So what we get in here, look here, that is feeling cooler and growing warmer. Well, you could, if your brush strokes, if you alternate warm and cool colors, you begin to create a vibrancy, very desaturated, you can create a vibrancy. That's where the technique of luminosity, that's where it comes from. That's where it happens. It happens in that warm-cool relationship. Sometimes it's warm-cool relationship is directly, it's two hues, and sometimes you might see that relationship being two saturations of a single hue. So you see how much fun that could be to just take something ugly, something that you wouldn't want to, some people would say they wouldn't want, but you could make something beautiful out of it. And if you notice, we have this lovely value contrast of this tree right here, and we could pick up on that and use the value contrast. And that reminds me of something else. In the very, very dark colors, it's more difficult to read hue. Very difficult to read the hue in the very, very dark colors. And also, we can accurately say that a color does become cool the darker it is, and a color does become warmer with light. So the value can play a role in the warm and the cool temperature of a painting. But here's one thing that I have noticed in my own work, and I've noticed it in other painters' work too, that black never works. Black by itself never works because it just sits there and goes flat against the colors around it. But one thing that works, you could use black, but add a hue into it. For example, adding a bit of alizarin crimson into black pulls a hue in there that can then, it doesn't have to be very much, it doesn't have to be very visible, but it can act as to create a color relationship with the colors around it. Or adding ultramarine blue into black. Any transparent dark color added into black will do that. But my preference is not to use black at all, but my preference is to use dark transparent complements mixed together to get a really, really neutral dark. When I really need a dark, this dark right here, use the warm and cool again, the complements of two transparent colors, but allow one to dominate. So if the overall scene, it depends on whether I want to have it harmonize or whether I want to accent the colors around it. But if the overall scene feels warm, in that case, I might want to make the alizarin more dominant. It means it has just a little bit more visible hue in the mixture than otherwise. But if I wanted it to harmonize more towards the blue-green, then I would allow the, what did I say? Did I say which color? If I were working with Viridian, for example, in transparent oxide, or Viridian, for example, in alizarin. So, the proportions, the proportions are what you then it can't be determined by like 1 teaspoon of this and 2 teaspoons of that, but the amount of what you add of one color to another to make the change that you want. I hope I didn't trail off too bad on that. Let's see here. Ellen asking, since we usually, oh, I read that one already. Okay. Everybody's fascinating. Thank you. That makes sense. I'm glad it makes sense. It's encouraging when somebody affirms that something makes sense. So I hope that you will, all of you, whether you're with us live today or whether you're watching this after after it's gone on to the recording, the videos, after it's been archived. I think that you would have so much fun if you just let yourself relax and play with color in terms of this warm and cool, of what cool and warm do to each other, and how to actually cool colors, how to cool or warm a color, adding a complement to it, or adding one of the colors that has this complement into it, or how to warm a cool color, or how to actually create a warmer or cooler version of a color by adding one of its analogous colors to it, where you're pushing that color. But that can be done on that full scale, that full saturation scale, or from the most saturated to the most neutral, where the most neutral a color can be, where we can still read some of this hue in it. So as I continue to say, the experience is what counts. Playing with it. Don't try to do this while you're creating a painting. Lord, no. Well, I don't know. It could come out great, but you never know. I just say playing. Play with it. You know, it's not a waste of material. It's certainly not a waste of time. It's not a waste of material when you're learning, and so you can play with these things. But as you're playing with them, think about. Pay attention to, not necessarily think, just pay attention to what one hue is doing to another, how those hues are behaving against each other. And I think you would just be absolutely charmed with what color can do, especially when you're working with those warm and cool concepts. Let's see. Ellen says, thank you for making this fun. It could be so intimidating if presented in a dry and condescending manner. Yeah, I know that. I had it presented to me many times in a dry, condescending manner. And I just, oh my God, I can't remember all that. What I find is that attitude counts for everything. When you approach anything from a playful point of view or from a point of view of curiosity or excitement about what you're going to learn, it's going to stick with you. It's going to become part of what we call your toolkit, so that when you're actually in your painting, you don't have to think about it very much. You can just watch what's happening, which to me is just absolutely exciting to just begin to watch what color is doing to color as I'm placing it on a canvas. Mary Ellen, thanks, Dianne and Roger. So wonderful to see you. I'm telling you, it's wonderful for me to see this camera in front of me and know all of you are sitting there. I've really missed working with you since I took my grand crash. But I'm so happy to finally be back in business again. And I hope in a couple of months I can be fully back to business, but this is certainly the beginning. I do want to say here at this point, before we close out, it's almost time to shut this thing down. One thing that after I got home from the hospital, I had waiting for me in my mailbox cards, actually snail mail cards from all over the United States and from all over the world. I was so touched by every single one of those, and I still will pull them out and look through them, because you warmed my heart with those of you who sent cards. You warmed my heart with your messages, and some of you made cards, and I loved every single one. So just going to give a broad thank you here, and hope that those who sent cards are either present now or maybe will see this video later. Also wanted to tell you that naturally when I was incapacitated, I wasn't answering your comments and quick tips. Now, you know, one thing that I have always, since we've been doing this, one thing I have tried to do is to always answer all the comments that people make in the quick tips. But of course, I got slightly behind. And I'm trying now to just go and take as many of those as I can without going blind. And eventually, I hope to be able to answer all the comments, especially when there were questions asked during that, I'll call it the blackout period that began in February the 8th and went through March, April. Well, you know, that time span. So I will try to get to answering those eventually, hopefully. And if not, go ahead and, if you didn't get your comment answered, do enter it, make the comment again, or do ask the question again, and we'll get back on track. So, thank you for your welcomings back. Courtney says, love having you back, and I love it too. Sheila, thanks, Diane. Wonderful session. Thanks, Sheila. So, yeah, we are out of time. Now, two reminders. One, next month we will be having our chat on the fourth Sunday. On the third Sunday is Father's Day. But we will have the chat on the fourth Sunday because Roger's going to be celebrating Father's Day elsewhere on the lake, right?
Yes.
You're right. So we're going to give him that. He deserves it, especially after having to steer the boat for the past 4 months. Also, want to remind you that at from until the end of May, we've launched a new course on warm and cool colors on the Academy at 50% off. We like to offer our new courses initially at 50% off to give people an opportunity to be really introduced to it before we let them revert to the regular prices of the courses. So DianneMizeAcademy.com, Diane 2 N's, DianneMizeAcademy.com. There, the new course is right there. When you open the front page, it's the top of the page or right under the banner. And you can just click on that and get that course while it's still 50% off. What is the title of the course? Something about warm and cool colors. I can't remember now. Anyway, it works. So that takes care of everything, doesn't it? Thank you all for joining us. I can't say it too many times. So glad to be back again, and look forward to seeing you next month, the fourth Sunday, for a different topic for our chat. So bye bye for now.